One of the things that British Columbia doesn't do very well, it does somewhat at the local level, but not at the provincial level, that other provinces have now started to do, which is to include the home address of the donor in the information that is provided. Now, that information is not always provided online, but is accessible to reporters, other political parties, other interested groups, so that they can verify that a company is not potentially doing exactly what you've set out. And in fact, it was because René Lévesque in 1976 brought that requirement in Quebec about the home addresses, that everything that the Charbonneau Commission is now studying came about because reporters were able to access the home address of donors and to be able to identify that the donor was in fact the same person who was the senior vice president at SNC-Lavalin or a host of other engineering companies. The loophole question, regrettably, is going to always be a tough one. There's much that can be done to reduce the number of loopholes, but regrettably, no matter how many rules you put in place, there's always going to be somebody who's going to try to cheat. One of the ways that you can reduce loopholes is ensuring that everything has an authorization statement on it from an official agent, and that in some provinces they actually go further where you actually have to put, and I'll explain why in a moment, where something was printed. So you have to say printed at such and such a printer with the address, and that was because they found in Quebec the political parties were setting up dummy print shops in order to reduce their campaign expenses. Those are a few of the ideas. I think political parties, in terms of drafting legislation, and it was something that they were not included on for Bill 20 and 21, need to set out what those concerns are, agree on what those concerns are, and try to come up with the best approach to reduce them. And then ensure something that doesn't exist in BC, that there is real hard penalties when you break the rules. One of the things that stuns me is that a political party in BC that accepts a prohibited donation under the law is required to return it. That's nice. I suspect that if you look at the other provinces, you'll find that there's actually a fine for doing it as well.
First of all, let me just say that that loopholes, I believe, are somewhat being filled by Bill 20, so that there's a requirement to actually publicly disclose the names of people who contribute as a business, as in a sense third-party advertisers. But I haven't read every single page of the bill. It's a long bill. My suggestion is to go to it, but that was certainly in the discussion paper. And it's worthwhile pursuing, because I think that there are some greater limits other than the volunteers, which is still free. You can freely be a volunteer, but other than that, you have to disclose. The second point I want to make is that sometimes there is an unwitting acceptance of a donation where you may not realize it comes from a certain source or whatever. And then it's what you choose to do, and it's not about being illegal, but if it's a choice. For example, I did receive a donation from a major developer. I won't disclose who, but in the last election. But in recognizing and associating the name with the company, I returned it. So there's, I think, an opportunity. I think our rules within the Green Party of Vancouver say the same thing, that upon finding, and you shouldn't knowingly accept, and upon knowing, you should right the situation. So I think that needs to be common practice amongst the parties.
Bob, your question raises a couple of very important issues. Loopholes and outright fraud. Let me deal with the loopholes first. Contributions in kind. If the recipient does not indicate on their finance disclosure sheet, accurately disclose the worth of that contribution in kind, if they undervalue it, and if a proper valuation puts their total over the allowable total, then the position they're elected to is vacated. They are removed from office. So if there's a cap on what you can spend, and you play around by artificially reducing the worth of that in-kind donation, and it's found to be that with a proper valuation, you're over the cap, then you're out of office. Now your second question, SNC, that wasn't really a loophole, that was out and out fraud. And that could be not just a corporation doing that, it could be me giving you money and asking you to donate it to Coke, so that the aggregate came from two different people. That's outright fraud, and that's where the police get involved. Normally, Coke would strongly support a lobbyist registry. In terms of term limits, we don't have a position on that. I can only give you the term limits position. And that's no, not a limit to the number of terms, but the length of the term should be reduced. And I like what I heard just a moment ago from the fellow to my right, reduce it not from 4 to 3, but to 2. And I'm going to match and go one step further. There was a time in Vancouver, 2-year limit, but elections every year for half a council. Let me tell you, politicians are inversely accountable for what they do the longer the term. The shorter the term, the more accountable, because the bad that they do is fresh in the voter's mind if the election is just around the corner. So 2-year terms, half a council every year.
I can make it pretty simple for the lobbyist registry question. We fully support that, and if we have the power to institute a lobbyist registry, it's one of the first things we'll do, in addition to the an audit organization or anti-corruption unit. And we just think that it's out of control again with the spending, those three things. The spending, well, that goes without saying, but the main reason here that we came today, I believe, is spending limits, the proposition that Adriane Carr is bringing to council tomorrow. So that, the lobbyist registry, because we just don't know, without intense investigation, who certain people are really speaking for and working with. And we have to shine a light on it, and that's going to allow us to do that.